Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani. Welcome to episode 188 of Weighing In with my good friend Mark Ostrander. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. It is the best weekend of the year. It's always the best weekend of the year. I've had a ton of people call me about it. You and I spoke. It always delivers, right?
Yep, and you got to be there in person watching it. I got to watch it from a laptop and a TV with my brothers. So yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, I think I talked to you 2 of the 3 days I drove in. It was a little interesting for me. It's the first time I've stayed at home when the tournaments at nationals or tournaments to nationals are here, because I always stay downtown and run my event. And so the first day we're going down there, I got to call my mom and dad and go, where do I park? So I got no idea. And Hardell stayed with me. Hardell Moore, who did the Big 12s with me, NCAA finals for Oklahoma State. He came in and stayed with me, and he's just laughing, like, get it together, man. But we figured it out. Saw a lot of old friends. That part's always nice. There's always, it's just crazy. So USA Wrestling.
It was a different feel for you, though, wasn't it, David?
It was really bizarre. It was bizarre. You could hear everything. There was a kid screaming on one of the mats. Logan Massa was bending this kid, and you could hear every single scream. You could hear, like you said, you heard on TV, like the profanities Jacob Warner said after he's won his match.
Oh, yes, I did.
And it just, first of all, let's start with the positive. NCAA, Chris Roseman, St. Louis Sports Commission, unbelievable job getting this thing pulled off without any COVID tests.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm biased. I love Chris Roseman. That guy's like another brother to me, but man, they did a great job. And it meant so much to all of us, just to so many of us, just to have some sense of normalcy. I think all year, people, you and me have been talking on the phone, you're like, well, if they make it that far. I mean, you're a little more realistic. I'm a little more optimistic, but you're always like, well, I hope they make it that far. Yep. And they made it. And they did a great job. The split sessions were a little odd to watch, like the wrestlebacks, like after 57, then they came right back to 25, and that your brain's not ready for that,
Sure.
I'm sure coaching was interesting because you're leaving kids behind for a couple hours, and then those kids go away. I think second, third, fourth assistants, I think RTC coaches, I think volunteer guys probably played a huge role in this tournament this year, like helping guys get down to weight, keeping them out of trouble, helping them find food, helping them relax, playing video games with them, all this stuff that people do. I think it was huge. So, but shout out to all the wrestlers, and we're going to we'll dig into it. Let's get into the screen here. And we'll go to the brackets. So we'll start at 25. So let me see if I can get the completed ones here real quick, because I know I had them here. So
yeah, it was an outstanding tournament to watch, even from home. The energy by the athletes, the way they performed, everybody was it was into it. And the great thing is it was very competitive up to the finals. And the finals were outstanding, but the team race was not decided until Saturday morning after the first round of the wrestlebacks. And then Iowa clinched it. So, they were able to relax a little bit. But then the race for, Oklahoma State went ahead of Penn State. So, it was exciting the whole time. So that was really neat.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're going to start with the weights, and we'll finish it with the team stuff. And we're not going to get through all 10 weights in 45 minutes, but that's cool. USA Wrestling said that we have 2 shots at it this week to get through this and then preview the last chance qualifier.
Okay.
So 25, I'll let you go first. You'll do the odd weights. I'll do the even weights. What were your thoughts about the bracket?
Spencer Lee winning his 3rd national title with torn ACL, no ACL on the other knee. I think he was really hurting. And as good as he is, he's a lot better when he's healthy, and that's scary. But I thought he did what he had to do. Most of his work he did was just controlling the pace of the match, controlling what he could control. And when he got on top, he punished the guys. The only one I think he didn't turn was in the championship match. So, credit to him. If you scroll down a little bit, Courtney had an outstanding tournament. And not just the finals, he wrestled somebody that was just a lot better than him. But the Lamont match was outstanding in the semis. And I thought Lamont would be in the finals. You thought Courtney would be there. So you got that right. Courtney really impressed me. Lamont went on the back door and then got beat again. So, and we had talked about this, David, so many times. How are the athletes going to do on the backside once they've lost and their dreams gone of being in the finals? Are they going to be able to perform? And we saw a lot of kids not perform. And we saw a few, especially at 149, that came from absolutely nowhere and ended up third in the country. And we'll talk about him when we get there. Outstanding.
And some of us might have picked that guy on our fantasy team and got a picture with them outside afterwards when we won our pools.
I think I saw one of those. So
one of those that might have happened if you were in St. Louis and just really smart at picking fantasy teams. Just maybe.
Hildebrandt in the semis against Spencer was competitive. He's about 6 inches taller than Spencer, so his length was a little bit of an issue. But once Spencer got going, it's kind of like a runaway freight train.
Yeah, I got a chance to actually visit with Courtney on Saturday night, and super nice kid. He also said he's like the strongest human being on top. He's like, he doesn't feel that strong on his feet. He goes, not like he's weak, but just, sometimes guys collar tie you. He goes, that really wasn't where you feel him. He goes, you feel him on top. I think the two other stories at this weight class, Killian Cardinal, I got to give a shout out to Steve Martin from Old Dominion. When they closed that program down, he and Daryl Thomas did a great job making sure all those kids found a home. And Hardell and I watched him wrestle at the Big 12s, and he was just kind of coming back into his own and getting healthy, and he places as a 17 seed. Yep. And then speaking of fantasy teams, we didn't pick this dude, but man, we should have put Patrick Mckee on our team, right? Like he comes back, he's losing to Noah Certain 6-0, comes back and beats him, loses a tough one to Latona, and then pins Cody Russell, pins Robbie Howard, almost majors Teskey, pins Eric Barnett, beats Lamont, beats Hildebrandt. So the weird thing about this tournament, you and I always would do the rankings, like we would have done them today.
Yep.
Well, there's nothing you just leave them up because no one's gone. You just start figuring out who's gone, but it's not like, oh, Mark's a senior, so he's gone. Everyone's got this eligibility extra year. This year didn't count, however you want to call it. So,
but I do think some kids will not come back next year.
Oh, for sure. But what I'm saying is
about that.
We don't know that. So for now, the rankings are what the rankings are. Plus you start adding in all the hammers and the red shirts and the transfers. Okay. So it was a fascinating weight. It was the one that you kind of thought that and 285 are the ones you thought were next topic. And they ended up being that way. But all the other stuff in between was really interesting. So 133, I'll go first here. Really, really chalky when you look at the seeds. The only, Louis Hayes beat Lucas Bird, which a 7-10 is a coin flip. But you have the other 7 seeds all make the quarters. The top 4 make the semis. The top 2 seeds each win by a takedown, or in RBY's case, 2 takedowns. So the things that the final match to me, I actually said to somebody, I go, RBY, if he wins this match, he'll win it up by riding. And the guy goes, what are you talking about? I go, Fix is really good on bottom, but I guarantee you he's not practicing on bottom. He's getting ready for the Olympic trials.
Yep.
Not practicing on bottom. And when you watch a lot of Big Ten wrestling, we both do, but I mean, you watched more of it this year just because of the Big 10, Big 12, what we were each doing at that time. He's a sneaky good rider, man. He doesn't turn good kids, although most guys don't turn good kids except for like Spencer, but he's really good at riding. He's really good at dropping down and then getting to that 4 count. And you know me, I've got a lot of friends at Oklahoma State, but I thought those stall calls that put that match into overtime was wrong. I thought RBY won that match fair and square in regulation.
Yeah.
DeSanto came back through and took third. I guess he said something to the like the officials in the background, like that's why he didn't get to be in the march. So
it was a little different what I heard, but I'll explain what I heard.
Well, that was the release that they said they put out.
I had heard that it was a female employee there trying to tell him where to go, and he did not appreciate being told where to go. So he had some choice words for the young lady, and his assistant coach was right behind him, heard it, pulled him off to a side, talked to the head coach, talked to the administration. I don't know if they reported the NCAA or the female employee reported it, but they made a quick decision that he was not going to be part of the ceremony, which I agree with, and I think he'll learn his lesson from it. He's made tremendous strides since he's been at the University of Iowa. He's a completely different kid than when he got there, and I really do like him. I love his tenacity when he gets on the mat. He goes 100 miles an hour, and I think we saw that this weekend, even in the semis against Dayton. You could tell Dayton doesn't like to wrestle him because he doesn't give you any room to get going. It's hard to get your offense going when somebody's on you all the time, and that's what he's good at.
Yeah, I don't think what you heard and what I heard is really any different.
No, probably not. I just heard it was a female employee, and she was telling him where he had to go.
Yeah. So just to point out, the top 8 seeds that didn't get through here were Philippi and Schmidt, and we both talked about how they were going to have tough draws. Yep. At 25, there was a couple guys that didn't place.
Camacho was a big surprise to me that he didn't place.
And Teskey.
I really thought. And Teskey. Teskey has had problems wrestling Mckee before. He lost to him before, so I guess that was kind of a toss-up match to me. I didn't think Mckee would control the match as well as he did, but I think Teskey came a long way this year and showed that he deserves to be in the top of that group to be an All-American. So I was really happy to see that from him.
Rayvon Foley's the other top 8er that didn't place there.
Yes.
Okay, so 141. I'll let you go first. So it's Nick Lee, Ironman, 3rd and 4th, Tariq, Rivera, 5-6, Duncan, Red, 7-8, Sherman Carlson.
I guess the one thing that stood out here is how Ironman and all the Penn State wrestlers, that's the thing about Cale. They're able to learn from previous matches, David, and we had talked about this quite a bit when we're not on air, but how he's able to coach a kid up to perform for certain matches and change little things so the same results don't happen over and over again. And he was able to do that with Lee. He was able to do that. Rivera could not make that, the jump. Last time it was so close. This time it seemed like it was going to be close, and then all of a sudden it wasn't close. So he wasn't able to do that. And I thought Jaden wrestled a good match. He almost had a takedown there at the end. It's just the way Jaden wrestles. Me personally, he looked a little tired there going into overtime. Maybe it's because he shot a lot more than he had. Maybe it's just a long tournament. I don't know, but
well, I think there's a reason. When you pin everybody all year and you don't go into the third period, and the few times you do go into the third period, you're mollywhopping everyone. You're wrestling with the lead. You and I both know that the tension that comes out of your body is when one mistake can hurt you. I mean, if you're winning 7-1, you don't really get tired. You're just like, I just don't get put to my back and I'm going to win.
Sure.
I said this to you off the air when we were picking our fantasy teams. I'm like, and I'm not saying it's Cale. I think it has much to do with Casey Cunningham and Cody Sanderson. But the Penn State coaching staff, if they get film on you and their kids get a feel, those guys make as good of adjustments as anybody in the country, and it's not close. A couple other things stood out to me. Tariq Wilson wrestled his freaking tail off.
Phenomenal.
Chad Red, 4-time All-American, and literally bought 7 pair of wrestling shoes with him to the tournament. He kept switching out. And then Real Woods, he only wrestled for 3 weeks. I actually talked to his dad. he was taking classes like crazy because his goal has always been to go to Stanford, and he wanted to get his degree from Stanford. So that's why he was sitting out, so it's interesting how you kind of think one thing and then you get more data. And that's why I've always, like, I sat near an area where, like, there was one guy that kept yelling from the crowd, like, what people should do. And the guy never made the state finals, and he's just yelling. And you're like, man, like, one, you're just yelling to try to get on TV. Two, you're not even yelling the right thing. And three, they're certainly not listening to you. You know what I mean? That they got somebody working with them every day for most cases 4 or 5 years, 12 months of the year. Like, that's, I mean, it's fine. You want to do that, but it's not productive. Nick Lee, I think he scored as many points. I think he was third behind Spencer Lee and Gable Stevenson for most total points in the tournament. So really wrestled well, controlled the Rivera match. It wasn't close at all. Did kind of what I thought he would do in the finals and not pick down, and knew he had to get 2 takedowns to win it and figured a way out to do it. So, but congrats to Tariq. I had told you about Tariq his freshman year, and that's when he made that magical run and almost took out Seth Gross. And he's just,
one other guy I want to talk, and I know other guys' place that we haven't talked about yet, but Carlson from South Dakota State, placing in the top 8. What, for the 15th seed to place at this tournament at this quality of a weight was really impressive, because there's some good kids that did not place this tournament. So
yeah, he beat Caden Rooks, then he beat Colin Valdivias, then he beat Real Woods, beat him, and that was a crazy match. It was super close.
Yep.
And then he scored 6 at the end, and that was the blood round match. Yep. Then he loses to Dylan Duncan, and then he he ends up 8th. So okay, 49. So I'll go first here. Number one, I think that was a takedown. Like, if you look at we're talking about the last shot. First of all, Sammy Sasso is completely sprawled out, and we call it get your back big. And he just got his back big, sucked him up, had the leg, had his hand on the other foot, and it looks an awful lot like the Jordan Oliver Logan Stieber, which prevented Jordan, that kept Logan Stieber on track to win 4. And they changed the rule because of that. So I thought that was crazy. This weight class was full of controversy. The Boo Llewellyn Josh Heil match with the refereeing, where they ran 7 seconds off and then the clock didn't run. So for people that don't know this, that weren't there, or I don't know what, I didn't watch any TV, so I didn't hear any what the broadcaster said. The table workers were in the front row of the arena. They're not on the ground. And so we've all coached at tournaments. You and me have coached tournaments against each other, like the Northern Iowa Open, and people are working all day, and somebody will forget to start a clock, or they'll run the riding time the wrong way. And, you got to get it fixed, and you yell at those guys, but it's such a magnifying glass here that, and I know Boo. I mean, Boo wrestled in my event. He's been injured a couple times. He's an awesome kid. But when they did the explanation, they said the rules don't allow you to just run time off the clock. I mean, that call and the Jacob Warner non-fall against Nick Reenan, which we probably won't get to till next week, were the 2 biggest subjects of Thursday night at the tournament. O'Connor beat Mahler in a match that went exactly like I thought it would, except for the fact Mahler didn't show a lot of urgency on bottom. The run of the tournament's Yaya Thomas.
Yep.
So he makes it to the quarterfinals. I want to make sure I get his bracket right here. So he beats Jaden Abbas, beats Legend Lamer, was going really good with Sammy Sasso, just got counter takedown every time. Gets in the blood round, beats Mitch Moore, beats Abbas again, beats Mahler, beats Boo. 25th seed, huge points from Northwestern, and could not have been a nicer kid. And the other guy that stuck out to me was Parco, the kid from Fresno, who is technically their backup 41-pounder. He lost the wrestle off to DJ Lauren, moved up, All-American. He's got 4 years of eligibility left. He made himself a lot of money this weekend.
Which you're talking scholarships.
Yeah, because he's going to have to re-sign.
Correct.
So, yeah, for sure. That has to happen. I mean, coaches were talking to me like crazy about that kid. Like, hey, what do you know about him? I'm like, just what was on his bio. And we liked how he wrestled at the Big 12s. He went hard. I'd have to go back and look at that bracket. I don't know if he lost to Boo or Mitch Moore or somebody else, but he's impressive. He scores from a lot of positions. But I shouldn't bury the lead. Austin O'Connor wins nationals. That's Coleman Scott's first national champion. And he came up and hugged it out with Hardell and a bunch of those guys and, gave me and my mom and dad a hug. And you could just see the relief on his face. I know O'Connor, he wrestled in Border Brawl. I'm going to be selfish for a minute. In the semis, Boo Llewellyn, Brock Muller, and Austin O'Connor all wrestled in my event. So that was super cool for us to see.
It was, yeah.
What were your thoughts on this weight?
Pretty much you covered everything. I was impressed with O'Connor, the way he kept his composure. I never got rattled. Wrestling Sammy, obviously, you can get rattled real easy, but he stayed in good positions. I agree with you. It looked because I was able to watch the replay over and over again at home, and pretty much everybody agreed he had the one leg, he had the head to the outside, he was between the legs, and he grabbed onto the foot or the ankle, and there were still 3 seconds left, and they didn't award it. But that went to a coach's review. That goes to a special room. They look at it from every angle. We must be missing something in the rules because they decided it was not a takedown, and you had a new national champ from North Carolina. So
I will say this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had about 6 coaches come up and talk to me, and they said, is this the worst officiated tournament you've ever seen? And it was crazy. Like, the secondary ref, like, I saw more people not know when time was running out. They didn't have towel tappers, and the secondary ref is supposed to have the action and the clock between him. And if there's no towel tapper, they're supposed to be, if they don't count down, they're at least supposed to yell time. So somebody knows.
Yep.
And these guys, some of them just fell asleep at the wheel.
And I think the reviews, David, some of these reviews took up to 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes long. It got to be where, if you're somebody from like a DeSanto that wants to be out there wrestling the whole time, let's go. I don't care if you even give them the points. I want to wrestle. It took so long to get some of these decisions. And then these coaches were giving the officials looked at the replay and then they called it, and then they throw the block again and want a coach's, appeal. So then it had to go to a different room, and that took another 5 minutes. It got a little bit ridiculous, to be honest with you.
Well, you and I are both coaches, though, and we're going to throw those bricks and fight for our kids. So
True.
I think the system just has to get better. I'm never going to blame a coach for fighting for his guys. And I also don't think they did a great job of keeping track of who won and lost challenges, because I saw a couple schools lose multiple challenges and somehow still had a brick left in the finals.
Sure. I think they were just giving bricks out there this weekend.
They just started a masonry store. Probably the biggest shock here is Ridge Lovett not placing as the 5 seed. And Murin, even though he was the 12 seed, he beat Lovett and then lost to Abbas in tiebreakers. This is the first move that sort of kept Iowa from running away with it. When Murin doesn't place, that's the first one. Like, he'd been seeded and ranked in the top 6 all year. Obviously, he was seeded 12 here and wrestled right to his seed. But most people thought, well, he's probably going to place. Most people that wanted to see a competitive team race needed him to not place, because Spencer wrestled to seed. DeSanto wrestled one above his seed. And at this point of the tournament, Jaden Ironman's still wrestling to his seed.
Yep.
So, and getting pinpoints along the way. So this was the first one. Okay, so 57. You want to go first here?
This was crazy. This weight shocked me like no other weight. I truly believe Deacon was unbeatable. I really did. I saw something in him that I haven't seen in the last 2 years. He looked human. And, it's not like Del Vecchia just caught him on his back. He locked that up with the half, and he just popped his head and put him right to his back. I mean, it was that simple to get the fall. but he struggled in other matches. You know, even in the wrestlebacks, he was down to guys that you normally would see him beating by 7 or 8 points.
He almost lost to Frantic, dude. Like he
I
should have
know.
lost.
I mean, he did not wrestle the way. I don't know if it was a weight issue. I don't know if it was a pressure of being at the national tournament because they didn't wrestle in last year's. The last time he wrestled at a national tournament, he got beat twice by Iowa's Caleb Young, which he had beaten Caleb Young during the year. So I don't know if it was a pressure thing. I don't know if it was a weight thing. I will be absolutely amazed if he wrestles 157 next year.
No, he's not. No way.
He is one big 57-pounder.
Well, the other thing, he's going to wrestle 74 kilos, which is 162.8. So it doesn't make any sense for him to be.
Yeah, I think he'll be at 65 next year. David Carr, what an outstanding performance. He just went in and did his job. It was so fun to watch him. He was like a surgeon. He just took these kids apart, didn't give anybody an opportunity to stay close with him, was just nickeling and diming these kids to death. And he controlled pretty much every situation he was in all day long. His hardest match, I think, was when he wrestled Brayton Lee from Minnesota and they went into a tiebreaker. But
yeah, he didn't control that match.
No, but at no time did it look like he was going to lose in this
tournament. When he got reversed, it did.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's down 2-1.
Yeah. Carr can score from any time he wants to score, and he was able to do that this weekend.
I can't say I'm going to disagree with you there. When you're down 2-1 with 30 seconds left and you got to get out, it doesn't look like you're in control of the match. So
did he get out?
I think the story it this way. Well, first of all, the celebration of David Carr and Brent Metcalf reenacting the Darian Caldwell shove was freaking brilliant. Yeah. And I didn't even know Metcalf had that ability to laugh at himself like that. I ran into Kevin Dresser Saturday night. He said they've been rehearsing it for a while. And I have a phrase like they stuck the landing. Like they got it right. You know, they did a great job. I think the story at this weight, besides obviously Carr, well, Delvecchia making the finals for rider is amazing. That guy's super good crab rider. Wyatt Sheets, man, the number 34 seed, wasn't even in the bracket. Has it
scheduled to have surgery before the national tournament.
Supposed to have surgery on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And just
they tell him you can't. You got to wrestle.
Yeah. And, you know, he loses to Deacon, comes back through the back and beats McCoy, DeVos, Ridge Lovett, or not Ridge Lovett, Johnny Lovett, excuse me, for Central Michigan. And Berge got hurt in the quarters, so they knew the winner of that match. And Oklahoma State caught 2 of those where if you win to get into the blood round, you're good. Yep. Because then they picked up, you know, pinpoints there. Yep. The other kid that wrestled unbelievably good was Ja'Cory Teamer.
Yep.
He lost the second round to Brayton Lee. Then Major Cerniglia beats Luan in a typical Teamer stand around, I'm going to explode on you in overtime match, beats Frantic, Majors Sheets. And then what he did to Hayden Hidley was unbelievable. He was beating him 6-0 in the first 14 seconds. And somebody said, he goes, it wasn't just that. It wasn't like he feet to backed him, took him down, tilted him up, and got 4 counts all in 15 seconds. Crazy. And those were huge points for Arizona State because if he doesn't place, they probably take 5th or 6th.
Yeah. And I was telling my brother that I was watching this with when Teamer got up big, and he never stopped. I mean, he got up 6-0 and then he scored again. I think he scored more back points. He may have gave up, you know, a couple points, but he scored another set of back points. And I told my brother, just understand, he's been known to fade in the second and the third period. So it's not over yet, but he really never did. He had such a good lead. He wrestled a little bit different toward the end, but it was an unbelievable tournament he had. I was really impressed. And he actually had Deacon too. He really did. That was a good match.
I had somebody say to me, like, well, he was up 14-3. He should tech him. Like, man, you never wrestled anybody that good in your life. You're up 14-3. And, you know, this is just you punch your ticket in for the 3rd place match. And I mean, you and I have talked about this. Taking 3rd is harder than taking 2nd because taking 3rd, you have to win the minimum of 2 matches when you know you can't win the tournament. When you take 2nd, you think you're going to take 1st the whole time. So your motivation level is completely different.
You're right.
So, all right. 165. I'll go first here.
Okay, because I don't want to.
Well, also at 57, this was the, Caleb Young took 7th and was seeded 5th. So that's the second part where Iowa started to come back to the field, based on their ranking seeding.
Here's the third part.
Yeah. So a couple things here. Number one, Shane Griffith. I kind of told you I picked him in the media pool. That kid was not an 8 seed. He shouldn't have been there, but he lost to Valencia and they bumped him down too far.
Yep.
I told you it was a terrible draw for Marinelli, and it was right. Mckee Lewis, it was hard watching him wrestle, man. He's a soldier. He's a warrior. He just physically didn't have it in him. There's so many storylines in this one. Keegan O'Toole looks like he's about 15-year-old in his face and wrestles like he's 25 years old in terms of how smart he is. Loses to Wenzel and comes back through and takes 3rd. Travis Whitlake comes back through and takes 4th. Anthony Valencia gets hurt and ends up still All-Americaning. Ethan Smith, Cam Amin, there's a bunch of them. But the story here is Stanford's dropping the program. Shane Griffith wins from the 8 seed. They're wearing the black singlets inside out. He made Sports Center. I got to, Dave Bell, his high school coach, is a friend of mine, called me like at 1 o'clock in the morning, just beside himself, happy. And if talking about a kid that made himself a lot of money, because again, he's a kid with eligibility, I think he burned 1 year last year. But and the other thing about these Stanford kids, like Real Woods, Griffith, Jaden Abbas.
Yep.
Academically, they get in wherever they want. If you got into Stanford, you can get in wherever you want.
Yep.
So, and I got a picture with Griffith at Union Station and posted it like Stave Stanford Wrestling, and it got about 150 likes in about 15 minutes because that kid just personifies class.
He does, and he's a nice young man. He went out there and did what he needed to do to try to save their program. He was hoping that if he won it, that would automatically save the program. Here's my thoughts. If you can go out and raise $2.3 million, or no, $12.3 million to save a program, David, so it doesn't cost the school anything to run it, and they say no, they're not keeping the program. They're not going to do it. So
they're also lying.
Who's lying?
Stanford. If they said it's a money problem, you go raise 12 mil, and then they're lying.
I agree.
They just wanted to cut the sport.
Yep. And and it's not the only sport they're cutting. They're cutting 10 sports out of their program. So, and I understand COVID destroyed the football season for them. They couldn't fill their stadium. Crimea River, everybody had that problem, but you don't see schools telling kids, you know what, your program's done. You can finish your education. But, they came there for the education, but also to be able to achieve a dream in wrestling. And they have some superstars there, David. They got some of the best kids in the country coming out of high school a few years ago. Now they got to start all over at another school. That's not right. It really isn't.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I echo those sentiments. I think what Griffith, Abbas, and Real Woods did, even though Real Woods didn't place, what they did in a year, not only with COVID, but with how California treated COVID and how Stanford got treated like a dirty diaper, how the wrestling team did by their administration, is next level mentally strong, just like unbelievable. The other thing that's obviously happened here is Marinelli loses in overtime and then hurt his ribs. This was the big one because on paper, he's 20 points plus bonus, and instead he scores 4, two frontside wins, 2 majors. But that's where they started coming back to the pack because a couple of the other guys actually wrestled a little bit above their seeds, but this is a big one in terms of where I put him in the team race. So
let's talk about Mckee Lewis for a minute. Mckee went out there. We weren't sure what we were going to get with Mckee, returning national champ, unbelievable talent, unbelievable young man, got nothing but class, very soft-spoken, doesn't, pat himself on the back. He's out there to do a job, and he does it. He looked phenomenal in the first match. Now, I know the talent level that he wrestled in the first match wasn't going to be what he saw all weekend long, but he looked really good. And then we were worried about schedule being so strong and physical, and he hurt his shoulder again. But he gutted it out to win the match. And you could, he was in tears, David. I mean, this kid was in a lot of pain. And we thought, can he continue doing this? And then the next day they said he had the medical forfeit out. I feel bad for him, but he will come back stronger than ever. And this is going to be, with some guys moving up, David, next year, this is going to be one of the best weights in college, without a doubt.
Yeah, Deacon's probably moving up. David Carr's dad, Nate, told me he was moving up after this year.
Can you imagine this bracket with those two guys in it?
Those two, plus Griffith, plus Marinelli, plus Mckee Lewis, plus Keegan O'Toole, Wenzel, yeah, plus and Travis Whitlake.
Yep.
Yeah, super.
And Valencia, if he's healthy.
He's been there like 7 years. I think he's done.
Think so?
Yeah. So anyway, but you're right if he's there. All right, 74. So Kemmer, Starachi over Kemmer in the finals. This is where we talked about that adjustment. I don't know how technically you watched both the matches, the first one and the second one, but I went back on my DVR and watched the Big Ten finals, and then I watched this final. If you watch what Carter Starachi did to Michael Kemmer's lead hand and which side of the tie-ups he had his head position on, and this is the kind of stuff my dad taught me a lot, but, Kemmer probably has some of the cleanest finishes in the NCAA in terms of like getting to legs, picking those feet off the ground and taking scrambles away. So I think they figured out you're not going to beat Kemmer. Like some guys, once they get to your legs, you're like, it's fine. I can out-scramble you. Kemmer's going to beat you if you get to his legs. So Starachi made a really, really concerted effort to keep him off his legs, did a ton of down blocking, did a ton of space sprawls, reshots. And I told Hardell halfway through the match, I'm like, you're going to win this match. Because what happens is, like, if you kick my butt the last time, you start feeling urgency when it's tied. And 1-0 is tied when it doesn't matter who's up. The other person's got their choice. Unless you think they're going to ride you for a minute, it's tied. And so the first period goes by, it's tied. The second period goes by, it's tied. The third period, it goes tied. And you're not getting like the 6 opportunities and you just, I'm going to finish one. Instead, it's like, man, this guy's cutting me off and getting frustrated. And we went in overtime and Hardell goes, Starachi's going to get him to take a lean shot and redirect him. And we both saw it. And that's exactly what happened. Yep. Bernie Truax. These kids from California showed up this weekend, man. Bunch of them really wrestled great. He's the 12 seed and ends up taking 4th. And then Jackson Turley posted on Twitter. He was the backup a month ago, the 26 seed, and ends up taking 7th. Logan Massa comes back and is an All-American again. Demetrius Romero. Utah Valley had 2 semifinalists. First time in history they've had that. I'm a little biased because they did the Big 12s, but I was really happy for them.
Yeah. Labriola, I think, had a great tournament. Got beaten the quarters, which, he got caught, which happens. It happens to everybody. You have a bad match and you get caught in a position you're not ready for. But I think he came back and showed who he was for the rest of the day. And coming back and getting 3rd in that weight bracket, to me, was very impressive. Another thing about Michael Kemmer, if you look, David, at his scores during the year, he never had a close match. And I think that makes a difference when you have a shortened season and you don't have anybody really pushing you, and then you get into a position, especially as big as the finals of the national tournament. All of a sudden, you get that, everything gets a little bit tighter, like we had talked about. And, kudos to Starachi. I mean, for able to figure a way to stop him from getting in on his legs. And, I mean, he shot a few times on Kemmer, and Kemmer just stopped him dead in his tracks, But, it came down to one takedown, and I think Starachi had nothing to lose, and Kemmer was wrestling, getting a little bit worried, and I think that's the difference.
I agree with all that. Kemmer's defensive hips are really scary. It's like he just puts weight on these guys, and like you can just see him like go flat. Starachi, I think, because he felt it once, was in there, got his lock, kept his shoulders big, and then came up enough to not get those go behinds, get those elbow pulls off, and all those sort of things. I think a lot of these guys, it was a huge benefit for the guy that lost round 1 to get those 7 minutes, to get that feel. It's not just video that the coach fixes. It's the kid. The kid's like, hey, man, I can't take this shot. I get too stretched. I can't take this shot. This guy redirects my lead arm too well. I got to take this straight on shot, even though it's not the right shot, because I can get there and I can work my way up. So, there's a ton there. But Kemmer might have had the same sort of good problem that Jaden had, Ironman, where they just were mauling guys all year. I mean, Ironman had a close match with Nick Lee, but he was he was always ahead. Nick Lee got the first takedown, so I shouldn't say that. Jaden got out real quick, took him down, rode him out the whole period, was up 3-2 plus a lot of riding time.
Yep.
And then was able to trade points with him. So, I mean, he was down for maybe 45 seconds, but he was always where Nick Lee was going to have to score to beat him.
Yep.
And it didn't happen this time. And the same thing with Kemmer. He was never in a match like that. And you can't say Iowa doesn't wrestle a great schedule. I mean, first of all, this year they just wrestled whoever didn't have COVID in the Big Ten.
True.
But, sometimes it just works out that way where there's certain weights and this weight was deep. 41 was deep in the Big Ten,
Yeah, he didn't get a wrestle against Labriola in the duel. He wasn't ready. It was first duel of the year for these guys, for Iowa, and for some reason they didn't put him out there. I think that would have been important to him, going out, having a tough match early, preparing him for other tough matches. But, I mean, I looked at his scores at the Big Tens, didn't really have a close match. Even in the finals, he controlled Srirachi at the Big Tens. He goes to the national tournament. He gets a tech fall, a major decision, 13-4, 8-1 decision in the semis.
Yeah.
I mean, he was flying high. He didn't think anything could stop him. All of a sudden, somebody made it a little bit harder for him to get in on his shots. And then you start panicking a little bit. But, I mean, he's a great kid, and I hope he comes back, next year. I hope he wrestles again, because he's fun to watch, and he's a great kid. He really is.
Yeah, we got about 2 minutes left, so I'll just sign off by saying this. I got a chance to watch the press conference from Spencer Lee, press conference from Tom Brands, press conference from Cale Sanderson. If you're a wrestling fan, you need to watch those 3 for sure. I just wanted to watch those in preparation for this podcast. Spencer Lee is a freaking animal. There's the meme out there where LeBron James has a high ankle sprain and looks like he's going to die. Spencer Lee's winning national titles and going to wrestle in the Olympic trials with no ACLs. Tom Brands, he actually said we need to celebrate. He goes, it's hard with our guys losing in the finals, but our fan base expects this. And Cale Sanderson, the king of positivity, just said, hey, our kids wrestle great. They come here to wrestle matches like this. We just need a few more point scorers. I think the team race next year sets up to be amazing with those 2 teams. Cornell's loaded. Oklahoma State wrestled really well, and they've obviously had some wonderful recruiting classes that they're going to be able to plug some kids in. Michigan's good. I mean, everyone's going to have everybody back. Princeton comes back. I mean, there's a bunch of these guys. So, we'll sign off for this week. We're going to go again
Thursday.
this. Yeah, on Thursday.
Yep.
We'll attack the last 3 weights, the team race, and get you guys ready for the last chance qualifier. And then we might make an announcement about who's announcing the Olympic trials if we get enough time to do that. So we want to thank you guys, as always, for watching, listening, tweeting, sharing, texting, and just in general supporting Mark and I. We love talking about wrestling. And thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all on Thursday.